You know what anybody, Fox News and the rest of the media doesn't want to talk about? I think
that's why when I was so surprised when they had Sharpton on working for Fox News.
Oh man.
When I saw that, I said, "That's it. I'm done."
You know what? I actually voted for him, and
Fox News. Yeah.
I actually voted.
No, he's just working as a commentator.
He now has his own show on MSNBC.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Wait a minute, this is the same.
And he's still backing Obama.
Yeah, this is the same people you go against. And I'm
It's
like,
unbelievable.
wait a minute, I'm confused. I said, "That's it. I'm throwing up my hands. That's all. It's over."
Yeah, I actually voted for him in the 2004 primaries, but he's really lost it with Obama. Cornel West, at least, is fucking telling the truth, and he's gotten a lot of shit for it.
Oh yeah, Cornel West. Now he really said some things, about that.
I mean, you know what the game they've been pulling for a long time is a game of contrast. You know, like, oh well, look what the alternative is. It's a bunch of crazy Republicans, and they ignore Ron Paul.
Wait a minute, how can alternative is Republican? Most of it is.
Ron Paul is not for big government. Ron Paul is not for big
media.
government.
Republicans never
No.
want to alternative media.
So if he's not for big government and he's against the corporate machine, who's paying for this? Whatever he's talking about.
Well, imagine the entire military-industrial complex money. Half of our IRS money goes straight to the war machine and the empire. So we stay the fuck out of other people's business.
How then, are things going to be accomplished if there's no government structure to kind of handle that?
He doesn't say there's no government structure.
What does he say?
Very limited government, and let the states do it. Let it get more local.
Well, you know why I'm concerned about that? Because black folks have a history with state control.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been a very good one. And if we don't have any type of, I understand a lot of the line that he's putting out, which is very important. And I agree with a lot of things he said. But I'm also concerned about that because once the state has a lot of control, black people become more and more disenfranchised as a result of that.
Well,
and when states had that power before and the federal government didn't step in, we were discriminated against rampantly.
They need to get together and have their voices heard.
Well, that's not an answer. That's not giving me a real, in terms of how he would address that. You can't just say, oh, they need to do that. You have to kind of like, if that's going to be the platform that he stands on, you can't just, discount people of color in that history. That's a long history in this country that this country was built on.
Well, I think, a lot of the mind control and the drugs and everything would be gone. He wants to pardon all nonviolent drug offenders and release them out of jail. There's a lot of fathers in jail for a long time for nothing, not hurting anybody.
And I understand that, but that's not really addressing my point.
A lot of problems also come from the welfare system because it's not set up to help people. Right now, if you and on welfare, they have little things where if a guy leaves his family, the woman gets more money. They're promoting disunity. They're promoting. No, I haven't.
Well, I raised 2 boys by myself. Okay, you can't tell me anything about welfare. If I didn't have welfare, I'd be dead.
No, but I'm just saying.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's not. I'm not saying. I'm just saying it's set up in a way that's trying to keep people down. They're they try to push away things like.
You're talking the same thing that Moynihan talked about in the 70s, and that's not. You got to have some safety net for people. You can't just. I mean, I understand idealistically that you could say, well, we need to make sure that there's none of those programs and these people. But then again, you're disenfranchising a whole lot of people who can't get work as it is. So I mean, if you're going to take a step like that, you better have some kind of safety net for people because you're going to see a higher crime rate. You're going to see a whole lot of black folks that are not going to be able to survive. Already the unemployment rate is very high in the black community.
Well,
so you can't just, discount that when you're putting out a line that you're putting out. And like I said, there's a lot of things that Ron Paul says that are very important in terms of dealing with the oligarch and and all of that. That's really important in the military-industrial complex and the prison-industrial complex. I understand all of that. But, you know, in that process, you can't just discount what's going on with black people and, you know, how it is that we're going to be faring during that transition. You know, right now, a lot of us are dependent on government subsidy. And,
What he says is that's the absolute last change he'd make. Would be anything regarding welfare or food stamps or anything like that. He would not cut that off until few years down the line when everything's set up. You know, the way it's set up now.
You have a way of surviving. You know,
the way it's set up now is they're constantly taking our jobs out of the country. What he wants to do is bring it back.
Of course, and we need that. We need that. So I agree with that. I'm just very concerned when I hear about, oh, we're going to limit government and we're going to. And I'm like, but wait a minute, what are these people going to do?
Also, things like this, having people come together, because this isn't government run. The people are getting together and feeding other people. Like, they're helping each other, and also food. Like a lot of the problem with food stamps.
They're really helping people to eat in Harlem.
A lot of things like food stamps. Like
They would be.
The prices.
You gotta.
There's a lot of there's a lot. I
believe.
believe Americans are, for the most part, compassionate and loving people.
And
once we get over this divide and
I've lived that reality
Yeah.
in terms of not having food, in terms of needing food stamps, in terms of raising kids on welfare. You know, it's when you have black people who have not had access, do not have education and skills, don't have a way of really articulating their particular issues, and are marginalized in terms of whatever process is being put out.
Don't you think a lot of that's deliberate on the system?
I absolutely think it's deliberate, but the question still remains: is how people survive within this whole changeover. You can't
like
just
I
say,
said, it's going to take a while. He said it would be a hard, tough first year, but the last thing he would cut would be
saying, okay, people will be benevolent and they'll give. You can't say that. That's not necessarily true. Not in this society. There have been many giving people.
We have a new society.
But you have never seen a society where if you take away government subsidies that have been given to people that they're surviving on, and those are taken away, you haven't experienced that yet.
Well, what about taking away the government subsidies to corporations first?
Oh no, like I said, I'm totally in agreement. We're totally in agreement there. But I'm saying that's
a lot of money that would come back to the people.
Who have to eat, single mothers who have to raise their kids, black women that don't have skills or jobs, people who do not have access to education and resources and things like that. You can't just say, we're going to limit government and all, because that's not realistic in terms of how people survive out here.
Well, be sure he's limiting he's limiting federal government. He's not limiting government.
It comes from federal government.
Well, then it should change to the states or the cities, and people will form.
But you have to learn. So you got to know the history. We have mainly a state-focused history.
Yeah.
Prior to the Kennedy administration.
Yeah.
Okay, and you had rampant racism. If the federal government, for instance, did not send the National Guard into the South, when you had black people that were being, disenfranchised, discriminated against, and all of that, wouldn't be able to have access to schools, all of those different situations, you would not have been able, I certainly wouldn't have been able to go to school now. If it was left in the state's hands, there's no way. So you can't.
That was the 60s, though. I think people are.
But I'm saying, you got a lot of Republicans now that are talking about states' rights. Well, to black people, that means white people's rights. That's what that means. When we hear that, you can't discount that. So I'm saying, I don't hear, like I said, I agree with a lot of the different things he's saying, but you have to kind of consider that there's a history that we've had in terms of needing the government to help us to survive. So you cannot, if you're going to lay out any kind of a program...
Have they done a good job with that, though?
That. I'm not saying that they've done a fantastic job, but I'm saying that when you're talking about dismantling that, you damn sure better have something in place to address the needs of the people who have been dependent on it and need it to survive.
He will. He
You
will.
know?
He
I mean,
will.
there's people. I don't know what the percentages are in the black community
For the-
that have their rent paid, food stamps, Social Security, whatever those government programs are. That's how they live. So you talk about dismantling something like
But
that, you're gonna have a serious problem.
it keeps them down, though.
Yeah,
keeps
but
them
you
down.
and that's fine. But then what are you going to replace?
Malcolm
that?
wasn't for welfare.
No, but Malcolm also was for self-reliance, but that had to come out of a base that was developed.
That's what we're gonna do.
And the Nation of Islam, when they developed that base, it was self-sufficient because they had their own businesses and all of that. But you have to train people. You have to put things in place in terms of financing. You have to do all of those things. Where's that going to come from? See, that's
people.
What, I'm saying.
The
You
people,
can't
not the
bring-
government.
The
people.
Right.
College.
It hasn't come from the people. That's what I'm trying to
They
tell
can't now. They can't.
College is like the new form of like almost forcing people into slavery, because the thing is, colleges, they're going up and up because the government will pay whatever ridiculous rate the college charges. So college administrators are pocketing money. College, like, all the way up, they keep pocketing more money. College is going up like 5.5% a year, and people get out of college $80,000, $100,000 in debt. They can never pay that back.
Like me, I went to NYU. I can't pay that back.
Like the reason.
I
Debt
know
is
that.
how they keep you a slave.
And I know that, but I'm saying, like, what is the alternative? The idealistic viewpoint is great. We're all for it. Nobody's going to disagree with what you're saying. Of course, it makes sense. That's what we need. But how you get there without people dying in the street is what the question is on the table. You know what I'm saying? You have to really be mindful of that.
Well, he said the last cuts will be to entitlements, and then after the military, that's so much money.
That's
That's
so
what-
much
right,
money.
Right.
So much. Like,
All that money back to the people.
And
so
I
it
think
might
that's
not even
really
be
a vital-
looked at like the entitlement, aspect of it, because so much is the military and the American empire. So
And interest on the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the greatest
Well,
Ponzi
they
scheme
need to be
in
dismantled
the
or taxed or something. I mean, that's ridiculous. The Fed doesn't even need to exist.